I pray at the outset Vedatri Maharshi and seek his blessings to address you all about the Simplified Kundalini Yoga. I also seek the blessings of Chilladamudi Amma, who was there between 1923 and 1985, and she was the mother of all. And I also seek the blessings of all the great souls who have worked with the yoga concept and introduced yoga as darshana. Before going into the paper, I am very much interested in understanding the simplified Kundalini Yoga. Kundalini eva bhavet shakti is what the Yoga Kundalini Upanishad says. Kundalini eva bhavet shakti. Kundalini means shakti. Shakti means energy. Kundalini is energy. Then what with yoga is concerned here with Kundalini, and why this particular concept of yoga is to be understood? And Vedatri Maharshi had shown us a path which is leading us to the state of the Brahman, the state of the realization. And Professor Irangavan has very clearly told that all the toxins in the body should be purified, and the man must be reaching a level of a total trans-puritan state. And in such a situation, how to understand the system of Vedatri Maharshi? That is the basic question. Because Vedatri Maharshi has not only spoken about magnetism, and he has termed his entire system as a journey of consciousness. It's a journey from the known to the unknown, journey from the sensory state to the transcendental state. It is a state wherein man can perceive himself not as a simple human being, but as a universal being. It is Vishwarupa. It has been very clearly told that it is a card state of Brahmakshema in Nyaya Darshana. It has been told, Tada Bhayam, Ajaram, Amarcha Padam, Brahmakshema Vaptihi. The man is having fear, a fearlessness. The man is having disease, diseaselessness. The man is having death, deathlessness. That is a state of immortality. An immortality without disease, an immortality without fear. So that is what we call as Tada Bhayam, Ajaram, Amarcha Padam, Brahmakshema Vaptihi. Man must cross the level of the disease and the old age. He must also cross the level of what is called as fearlessness. Then only man can understand what is the Brahman. This idea has also been told by Guru Nanak, Nirbhay, Nirvair. Bhagavan is called as Nirbhay. He is fearless. Nirvair, he is not having enmity. That lack of enmity, that lack of fear is very, very important for any student of yoga. And Vedatri Maharshi is very kind enough in order to bless the living beings with his simplified Kundalini Yoga. I will limit in this particular paper to understand the consciousness and magnetism. I will just go on reading a paper what I have already presented. So I will explain some of the places where it is very much essential. Consciousness and magnetism play a vital role in any yoga system. The modern yoga systems give importance to consciousness than to the state of samadhi. How Master CVV, Aurobindo and Vedatri Maharshi opined. Master CVV was at Kumbhakonam up to 1922 and he has found what is called as Bhrukta Rahita Taraka Raja Yoga. And Aurobindo was there at Pondicherry. He has supported integral yoga. And Vedatri Maharshi, who is a contemporary to them, he has given simplified Kundalini Yoga. Why this is needed here? Consciousness is considered to be all pervading and penetrating. It is within and around all the living mass and non-living mass. Then the basic question is how to understand consciousness and magnetism separately, and also particularly this forms the foundation for the observations. So here there are two things. One is the consciousness, which is not specifically defined even to this day, which is not identified and understood, but it is all pervading, pervasive, sensible, sensuous, transcendental, and even beyond also. That consciousness is there. In such a situation, how to understand that consciousness, and wherein magnetism has been told to be a principle by the physics people. They have identified the magnetism with having dispersion, deviation, and it is also having certain characteristic features with centripetal and centrifugal forces having the mass, energy functioning together. In such a situation, how we have to distinguish consciousness and magnetism? Why this question has come? Why we have to understand consciousness and magnetism put together? Vedanti Maharshi, the founder of modern yoga, has spoken about the non-verifiable philosophical concepts and verifiable scientific concepts. He has developed the scheme of science of divinity by a conscientious merger of the philosophical and scientific aspects. So Vedanti Maharshi had understood the world is totally governed by the laws of the science. The body is also governed by not only the laws of science, but also the law of the nature and also the cosmic energy. In such a situation, how to assimilate a science which is developed by the man, a nature which is developed by the energy, and the energy which is developed by the vacuum. What is the relation between the vacuum, energy, and the mass? How they are functioning together? They are joining together and at the same time they are detaching together. That joining and detaching, conjunction and disjunction, they are all only due to the functioning of what we call as the magnetism. Maharshi has introduced for the modern world, which is under the spell of the supremacy of technology and being taken over by the dwindling psychosomatic factors like stress, which is basically journey of consciousness and popularly called the Simplified Kundalini Yoga. Kundalini Yoga has been very detailedly expressed in most of the Upanishads like Yoga Kundalini Upanishad. The concept of Kundalini is very much discussed as Kundalini Tantra. There were famous people like Ramakrishna Paramahamsa of the 19th century, and also the latest people like Amma Jilledambudi. They had made very detailed comments on Kundalini. Kundalini is understood to be the serpent force by most of the Western thinkers, and they have tried to understand the puzzle of understanding the Kundalini. What is Kundalini? Kundalini is nothing but an energy encircled within itself, as itself. So that is like what is called as entwining and intertwining in its own way. If the electron, proton and the neutron are joined together, it is Kundalini. If we speak in terms of modern physics, Maharshi has identified consciousness as one of the characteristic features of Brahman, the other three being plenum, force and time. It must be understood that the consciousness functions as an integral unit of plenum with a specific degree of force over a period of time. Thus, these four dimensions are playing a vital role in understanding the role of consciousness. Vedanti Maharshi had gifted the world with what is called as the science of divinity, that is Brahmajnana. In his Brahmajnana, he has told Brahman is having four qualities. One is plenum, another is force, and another is wisdom or consciousness, and another is time. So that means man is functioning on the basis of the time, and man is functioning with the wisdom, and man is forced or driven by the force, and man is getting everything from the plenum. He is with the plenum and outside the plenum. He is within the plenum and away from the plenum. He is one with the plenum and one in the plenum. In such a situation, how he is different from the plenum? But it appears that he has been totally separated from a cosmic identity, and he is in a bio scenario, and he has to reach the cosmic scenario through certain etheric or atmospheric travel, and that particular travel has been told to be the journey of consciousness. And this journey of consciousness is considered to be having a very important part, because the simplified Kundalini Yoga has been a conscientious appreciation of all the senses, integrating within. The earth integrated into the fire, water and earth integrated into the fire, water and earth integrated into the air, and all these were integrated into the sky, and the sky is integrated into ego integrated into the Mahat integrated into the supreme vacuum. This is the system what we have to understand. This process of multiplied integration from the visible to the invisible state, from the verifiable to the non-verifiable state, from the conscious to the unconscious state or transcendental state, we have to understand the journey of consciousness. Maharshi spoke of the entire practice of yoga as journey of consciousness based on exercises, introspection, meditation and silence. Here Maharshi gives four stages. One is exercises. They are related with the physical body. introspection. It is related with the thought process, meditation. It is reaching the threshold of the vacuum and silence. It is merging with the vacuum or integrating with the vacuum. These are the process from the faith to the understanding and understanding to the realization. Maharshi has approached the ultimate factor of consciousness with an altruistic approach, and he wants to find out the truth of the truth and the ultimate of the ultimate. It must not be simple verbal statement. It must have a specific phenomena called the experience beyond the senses and mind. The simplified Kundalini Yoga is an ascending march into the energy field, Shakti Kala, and universal field, Shiva Kala, through the transgression of the impact of the zodiac, Dvadashanga. Maharshi has given us a Turiyatita state. That particular Turiyatita state is beyond the fourth. Where is the first one starts? The awakened state. The second one is the dream state. The third one is the deep sleep. And the fourth one is Turiyatita. If we reach that particular Turiyatita state, we will cross the level of all the celestial bodies. How these particular Nicholas Copernicus and these people have described the astral bodies, the celestial bodies. We have to cross the level of the celestial bodies. It has been very clearly told that లోకంబులు లోకేశులు లోకస్థులు తెగినతుది అలోకంబకు పెంచీకటి కవ్వల ఎవ్వండేకాకృతి వెలుగునతని సేవింతున్. This is a great statement from Bhagavata in Telugu, where he says, after the detachment with the లోకంబులు, the words, lokeshulu, the lords of the words, lokasthudu, the members who are inhabitants of the lokas, తెగినతుది, after their dispatchment, అలోకంబకు, where there is no world at all, పెంచీకటి కవ్వల, beyond a particular darkness, dense darkness, వెలుగు ఆత్మమూలు అతని సేవింతున్. Who is shining there? Atmamolu. He is the root of the soul. He is the root being the soul. He is the root and the soul to the entire creation. So, లోకంబులు లోకేశులు లోకస్థులు తెగినతుది అలోకంబకు పెంచీకటి కవ్వల ఎవ్వండేకాకృతి వెలుగు. ఎవ్వండేకాకృతి వెలుగు. He is not multiplied. He is not muted. He is immutable. He is akhanda. He is Chinmaya, he is Jnanamaya, and he is Anandamaya, he is Achala and Paripurna. And that particular state one has to reach. Lokambulu, Lokeshulu, Lokasulu, Teginatudi, Alokambagu, Penjigati Kavala, Evan Deka Kurti Velugu, Adani Ne Sevintun. So he is considered to be, and this particular process is achieved in the meditation, crossing Dvadashanga, and after Dvadashanga, the sun, the moon, the sun, the moon, and also the Shiva Gala and the Shakti Gala. How we are reaching, how to enter the energy field and the universal field. This is what Maharshi calls the journey of consciousness. So, Maharshi explains the simplified Kundalini Yoga, the journey of consciousness, which is considered to be nothing but from the awareness to the trance-awareness state, from the sensory state to transcendental state. The understanding of consciousness is variedly found nowadays, and many psychiatrists, psychologists and others are also trying to give different definitions and make a study. Professor Edingowan, in his inaugural address, he has showed how this psychology and the philosophy of mind has developed in the late 19th century in Germany and Austria, and how Sigmund Freud and his previous people and the followers have explained and tried to understand consciousness in more materialistic terms. But actually, the concept of consciousness has been very clearly told in the Upanishads. Particularly, the Upanishads are speaking about the state of consciousness. Mandukya Upanishad, it is more speaking about the concept of consciousness. As this paper is basically related with the simplified Kundalini Yoga, the consciousness must be studied in a specific way. The first point we have to observe is that consciousness is said to be a quality of Brahman. So, according to Vedadri Maharshi, consciousness is a quality of Brahman. It is not different from what is called as Brahman in the Upanishads. Brahman is philosophical entity, and consciousness is also philosophical entity. So, we have told a particular path, a method of approach, that the divine science, non-verifiable philosophical terms and the verifiable science terms. So, if we take both these terms, consciousness is a philosophical term which is considered to be a characteristic feature of the Brahman along with the plenum, force and also time, and they are all non-verifiable. The human body and mind, which are instrumental in the simplified Kundalini Yoga, are merely biological. and they are compact union of the mass and energy. So the body is fully mass and energy. The involvement of mass and energy naturally opens a light for what is called scientifically magnetism. So now we are understanding the concept of form. It is Rupa. Rupa is having Shakti. Rupa means the physical elements. Shakti means the energy. And according to Jilladambudi Amma, she says that Rupa and Shakti, they are both interdependent. Rupa is dependent on Shakti. Shakti is dependent on Rupa. Both these people have lived in the same time. Both these people have discussed about the consciousness, and that's why I am trying to compare the points that are pointed out by Jilladambudi Amma also. Jilladambudi Amma clearly have spoken that consciousness is all pervading, all pervasive, all penetrating. The same is also the opinion of Vedatri Maharshi, and that is why I am trying to make a comparison here also, who is contemporary but not known more in Tamil Nadu. The involvement of mass and energy naturally opens a light for what is called scientifically magnetism. Thus, there is an inevitable interconnectivity between consciousness and magnetism. So, magnetism is verifiable. It is a physical mass. It is having dispersion and deviation, and that it is also having a direction. So the direction, dispersion and deviation, these are considered to be the characteristics of the magnetism. It is having attractive character and repulsive character also. Attraction and repulsion are also the function of the what is called as magnetism. And here Vedatri Maharshi has clearly distinguished magnetism as biomagnetism and universal magnetism. He has identified that universal magnetism is penetrating, permeable, permeating, divine fluid. It is a divine fluid. So universal magnetism in the state of the divine fluid, when that has been brought into the level of a biome, a biological entity, in the framework of the solid mass, then it is limited and it is subjected more to repulsive activity. So biomagnetism is more repulsive. All the knowledge what we are having through the senses, all the taste what we are having through the material, all the fears of death, all the fears of worry, disease, health, all these things are nothing but the variants of biomagnetism according to Vedatri Maharshi. And we are consciously feeling with this body and also with the mind and within the mind and being beyond the mind also. Here I try to go further. The body, according to Patanjali Yoga Sutras, is composed of 5 elements and is having the qualities of Prakasha, Kriya, Sthiti. Patanjali Maharshi in his Yoga Sutra has clearly told about Prakasha, Kriya, Sthiti, Sheelam. Sheelam means character. The body is characterized by Prakasha, Kriya and Sthiti. Prakasha means radiance, Kriya means function, Sthiti means stability. The body is a stable mass functioning through the movement of air and is ignited with the planetary radiation. Thus the body presents terrestrial, gaseous and photonic identities. The force behind the three can be called consciousness. See, the body is having a terrestrial identity because the entire is called Annamaya Kosha or Pranamaya Kosha. These are terrestrial and it is covering with what is called as the physical mass. The food what we take, the water what we take, it is all physical mass, and the air is also physical mass, but it is somewhat lighter than the physical mass what we are having. So it is gaseous, and the light we are seeing with the eyes is called as photonic mass, and that is why terrestrial, gaseous and photonic identities. The force behind the three can be called consciousness. If an attempt is made to understand yoga not as a mystic identity leading to Kaivalya or psychosomatic dimension being qualified by the synthesis of the functions of bioconsciousness, Chittavritti Nirodha, but only as an interaction and interaction within mass, one can understand the key role of the terrestrial, gaseous and photonic aspects. Here, I am not going into the contradiction about consciousness. I am not going into the consciousness about Chittavritti Nirodha, because most of the people have clearly understood that Patanjali Yoga Sutras are not properly understood in 20th century or even earlier also. Even by the name of Swatmarama, who has gone for Hatha Yoga Pradipika, he has clearly told, Bhrankya Bahumata Dvante, Raja Yoga Vajanataha, Bhrankya Bahumata Dvante, Raja Yoga Vajanataha. due to the illusion created by different opinions, one is failing to understand what is Raja Yoga. This is a condition which is clearly mentioned in Hatha Yoga Pradipika by Swatmarama. If that were to be situation in 7th century AD, when the people are not in a position to practice and understand Patanjali Yoga Sutras, how 20th century people or 21st century people can understand Patanjali Yoga Sutras and practice? But Patanjali has clearly identified, vividly understood the functioning of the Chitta Vritti, and the need for the Chitta Vritti Nirodha, and also told for to reach the Kaivalya. But the path is not suggested there. It has become a contradiction. So that is why we are not in a position to probe into those particular problems, and that too with a minimum knowledge of English and not having a proper understanding of the then Sanskrit language. We are failing to understand many a time Patanjali Yoga Sutras, and that is why the masters like Master CVB, Aurobindo, Vedadri Maharshi, they have all come forward to help the human people with the modern methods of yoga. And of them, this Sky Yoga is speaking about the terrestrial aspect, the gaseous aspect, and the photonic aspect. The eyes are looking at. It's a radiation cycle. The nose is taking the air. It is gaseous cycle. The food is taking the mouth. It is the what is called as the terrestrial cycle. So these three cannot be ignored by any person. Even though he is so much logical, he cannot ignore these three. Without these three, light, air and food and water, man cannot survive. When he survives, then yoga comes. Otherwise, what for the use of yoga? The survival of the human consciousness from the sensory stage to, from the visual and sensory stage to the transsensory stage, transcendental stage. It is the journey of consciousness. And here, the terrestrial aspects are promoted by the food and water, and the shape and qualities and vasanas are acquired through the terrestrial identities. They are basically geomorphic and geomagnetic, and they are characterized by centrifugal forces. They function as the negative dimensions of the body. They are subjected to pressure, liable for change, controlled by the process, dominated by youth and old age, decayed by pain and disease. This dimension functions as the negative element of the human battery. These terrestrial elements are subjected to deviation, dispersion, and influenced by refraction. That is why the world, which is one, appears to be many and multiplied. If you take a white light ray passing through a prism, there will be refraction. It will be resulting in VGR. That means all 7 colors are created from the whiteness. In the same way, the world is appearing to be so much colorful, delightful, merryful, and illusionary, because all the colors are nothing but refraction. The world is the best example for the refractive error. What is there explained in physics? The terrestrial elements are subjected to deviation, dispersion, and influenced by refraction. That is why the world which one appears to be multiplied, it is said to be the Maya or illusion by some of the Vedantins. But Vedadri Maharshi identifies the same as the impact of forgetfulness, which he understands as Maya. The terrestrial elements from the classical yoga work called Sola Deha, and is having characteristic features like Panchakoshas, 5 sheets of the fame of Taittiriya Upanishad: Annamaya Kosha, Manomaya Kosha, Pranamaya Kosha, Vijnanamaya Kosha, Anandamaya Kosha, and also the 6 nodal centers representing the 5 elements and beyond: Mooladhara, Swadhisthana, Manipuraka, Anahata, Vishuddhi, Ajna, and others. All these things have been identified. The terrestrialism is totally understood to be cognitive, and cognition is the basic quality of the terrestrial aspects. The human body recognizes, distinguishes, and discriminates, whom Maharshi calls as cognition, discrimination, and experience as order of function in all the living beings. He has identified pattern, precision, and regularity to be the non-living and living alike. But in the living only, he is identifying what is called as cognition, discrimination, and experience. This is the stage where the man is conscious, aware of the objects, vibrations, senses, sensations, and something intervening. The terrestrial aspects play a vital role in determining the surrounding pressure force, which is basically atmospherical in origin and provocative in function. Thus, any consciousness at the terrestrial level is provocative and pressurizing. That provocation is called the desire, and the pressure is called the Arishad, lust, anger, greed, attachment, vanity, and coercion. They are the result of egotism over the 5 elements. Thus, consciousness is intimately connected with the biomagnetic currents of the human body, with the impact of refractive error. So here, we must understand very clearly that Vedadri Maharshi speaks about the 5 deeds. And all these 5 needs are biomagnetic functioning. The pain, disease, death, they are also considered to be biomagnetism. They are created from the sexual vital fluid according to Vedadi Maharshi, and biomagnetism is considered to be very, very important functioning forces among the 8 basic aspects in all the organisms. So, in such a situation, this biomagnetism is very much intimately connected with the human body. The gaseous elements are the foundation for the astral body or Sukshma Sharira. This is controlled by the movement of the air. The air in the human body is called to be Prana, Apana, Vyana, Udana, Samana. So, according to our classical yoga text, the air is called as five types: Prana, Apana, Vyana, Udana, Samana. And 5 auxiliary airs named Naga, Kurma, Krukara, Devadatta and Dhananjaya. The chemical analysis is not the part of a yogic study which reflects the air. The components of the air are totally controlled by conduction and influenced by reflection. The heavy human body is literally moving with the impact of the air through exhalation and inhalation. The ascension of consciousness can become more ethereal than terrestrial when the gaseous elements are controlled. This is the starting point for what the yoga books refer as pranayama. So, why pranayama has come into understood? The body is having sthiti, kriya and prakasha. In the concept of kriya, the entire physical body, the physical mass, which is fed through the food and the water, which is controlled through the air, 5 varieties of air, prana, apana, vyana, udana, samana. The entire human mass is totally moving, or biomass is totally moving through the functioning of the air. That is why the controlling of the air makes a person to retreat from the visible to the air gaseous stage, from the terrestrial stage to the gaseous stage. So, this is a stage wherein the consciousness is totally functioning through the thought process. The thought has a form and not having a form. This is called Sakala Nishkala state. Some of the texts of Tamil Nadu dealing with Shaiva Siddhanta and also other things, Sakala, Nishkala and Nishkala states of the world. Sakala means which is having all the 3 qualities, all the forms, all these things is called as Sakala. And Sakala Nishkala means which is having the qualities of Sakala and Nishkala also. Nishkala means which is formless and qualityless. So, the Sakala Nishkala state, the air itself vibrates. The micro vibrations of the air channeled and institutionalized can distinctively influence the process of ascension of energy by controlling the consciousness. The gaseous elements always play a vital role to carry the magnetic imprints. The thought is also a magnetic variant. Here, the thought is a symbol but not sign. We must understand there is a difference between sign and the symbol. Being a symbol, it creates a sense or force to identify. Being a force, the same drives to a process to deal with the sign. I am looking at a fruit. When I am looking at a fruit, I am directly connecting with the fruit. But when I am thinking of the fruit, even though I am not seeing the fruit is there within the body. There in the mind, it is symbolic. There as a fruit, it is a sign. The relation between the sign and the symbol is the functioning of the thought process, wherein the sign is attracting the symbol. This is called as the functioning of the repulsive force of the biomagnetism. On the other hand, if you retreat from the sign to the symbol, it is called as Uparamana state. That Uparamana leads to a functional identity, what is called as Upajanana, leading for the enhancement of, or escalation of, or the ascension of the energy or consciousness from a terrestrial level to the celestial level, from the sensory level to the transcendental level. The gaseous element always plays a vital role to carry the magnetic imprints. The thought is also a magnetic variant. Here the thought is a symbol but not sign. Being a symbol, it creates a sense or force to identify. Being a force, the same drives to the process to deal with the sign. The sign is physical and terrestrial, and the thought is symbolic and magnetic. The magnetic circuit of the thought is very much powerful. The cycle of thoughts vary from beta, alpha, theta and delta. The concentration of the consciousness in the gaseous level naturally reduces the activities of the sense organs and motor organs. Yet the human being is sensitive, sensual and sensuous. Even though the man is away from the visible. Even though he wants to disassociate from the visible. Even though he wants to get detached from the visible, his thought will not allow. Because the thought is the symbol. It is symbolic of what we see, what we feel, what we try to understand, what we try to transgress or transcend or bypass. So that particular thing, it is, yet the human being is sensitive, sensible and sensuous. Most of the imbalances in the thought level are nothing but short circuits of magnetism in the gaseous mass. So Vedanta Maharshi speaks about the short circuit of biomagnetism and he calls it as pain. In the same way, when that particular biomagnetism takes a short circuit in the gaseous level, it is the thought. The classical yoga texts identify the function of this gaseous level as kriya or action. The same is also called as a state of dream, swapna, which is said to be one of the 4 stages of consciousness. When we try to understand the same in terms of yoga for modern age, the gaseous level represents a psychosomatic dimension qualified by thought process and which in turn constitute what the yoga text called chitta. So here the word chitta requires more explanation. Most of the people try to translate the word chitta with the word mind. Many English translations have used chitta with the mind, but actually chitta has been very clearly defined in Yoga Kundalini Upanishad. Chitta is having 2 aspects. One is called as Vayu and another is called as Vasana. Vayu means the air, Vasana means the dispositions. Vayu and Vasana, they form chitta. When you control Vayu, Vasana can be controlled. When you control Vasana or disposition, Vayu can also be controlled. This has been clearly mentioned in Yoga Kundalini Upanishad. The difference between the terrestrial aspects and the gaseous aspects is that the terrestrial are very much centrifugal, whereas the gaseous aspects promote centripetalism. They conduct energy to the perinucleic zone and it is encompassing force and at the same time self-suppressive force. Being self-suppressive, the thought process is pressure created on the gas by gas through the gas. It creates a domain of consciousness which is free from mass, but controls the identity of cognition. All the sense organs and motor organs are totally brought under the impact of kriya. That is why pranayama is said to be a medium for the ascension of energy and the translation of consciousness from the mass level to the gaseous level. The physical mass is controlled and coordinated by asana, Sthira Sukham Asanam, Patanjali, which is qualified by stability. The gaseous mass is controlled and coordinated by pranayama. So we have crossed mouth to the nose. Mouth indicates the Annamaya Kosha, and this is why nose indicates the Pranamaya Kosha, and we enter the Manomaya Kosha, Vijnanamaya Kosha, and Anandamaya Kosha. The photonic aspects are within and beyond the network of the eye in the physical bioscale. The photonic aspects are qualified by radiation and they are totally under the control of the solar energy dimensions. Herein, the consciousness is not absent. Even the solar energy, the consciousness is not absent. The energy is conducted through the air, will be merged with the vacuum, which is the center of the photonic element. It is light and luminance. It is beyond coercion. This marks a nucleic merger of the magnetism. The photonic aspect marks the state of realization. The photonic aspect is the threshold to universal magnetism and distinctive from the biomagnetism. So the photonic aspect is the threshold to universal magnetism and distinctive from the biomagnetism. This can be understood why Vedanta Maharshi speaks about the importance of Turiya meditation and Turiya Gita meditation. Turiya is the threshold to the Turiya Gita. It has crossed the level of the eye. Eye is the symbol for what is called as light. So when he crosses the light, enters the dense darkness, enters the signs of zodiac, which is called as Dvadashanga. He has to reach the Dvadashanta. So the difference between Dvadashanga and Dvadashanta has been very clearly mentioned by Vedanta Maharshi in some of his publications in Anboli, and there he says that man has to cross the functioning value of the time which is moving around through the 12 planets, that is Dvadashanga. And when he crosses it, then comes the Chandra and Ravi, and then we have to cross into the Shakti Gada. There comes what we call as the proper photonic identity. This marks the nuclear merger of the magnetism. The photonic aspect marks the state of realization. The photonic aspect is the threshold to universal magnetism and distinctive from the biomagnetism. Even in some of his experiences, Vedanta Maharshi says, even though one may not reach the Turiya Gita level, if he concentrates more for so many years, specifically on Turiya, he will get the effects of the Turiya Gita also. That means he did not enter into the energy field and the universal field by himself, but he can command himself, even being at the threshold, at the Turiya level itself, he can get the result of the Turiyatita meditation also. The human being has consciousness even in this state. It is called the divine consciousness because it is not intervened by the impact of the mass and energy. In the photonic aspects, the magnetism is undivided and the same is pro-nucleic in nature. This is called Karshana state. This is called as Karshana. Karshana, one who makes that Karshana or coercion is called as Krishna. So the word Krishna has come from the root Karshana. Here, the surrounding pressure and suppressive pressure equated and the frequency of force cannot be giving wider degree of dispersion. Even though the thought exists at this level, the same is not translated in terms of gaseous or terrestrial aspects. This is called as Amanaska. There is a tradition which is spoken in yoga, Sankhya, Taraka and Amanaska. What you are describing is called Sankhya, with which you are describing is called as Taraka, which is both beyond is called as Amanaska. When these three are put together, it is called as Paripurna. It has been told very clearly in some of the colloquial Raja Yoga traditions like Achala Paripurna Raja Yoga, wherein the Sankhya, Taraka, Amanaska, Chepe the Sankhyamu, Chese the Tarakamu, Suse the Amanaskamu. What speaks is called, what we are speaking is called as Sankhya. What is doing is called as Taraka. What is looking is called as Amanaska. So Amanaska is not making the stillness of the body, how most of the people think, as Professor Swadharsh and others have spoken about Amanaska means stilling the body or stilling the mind. Mind cannot be stilled. Thought cannot be stilled. Thought is a process, it's a movement, it's a wave of the energy. It's Kundalini working beyond and within the body limits also. So this is a state of realization and totally non-conducive of any variant matter. The photonic aspects are considered to be the true dimension of knowledge, and this is the reason why the Upanishads try to claim Tapasoma Jyotirgamaya. Let me be led from the darkness to the light. This is a journey from the levels of shadow to heat and then to light. The terrestrial aspects speak of shadow and awakening state. The gaseous aspects speak of heat and dream state. The photonic aspects speak of state of sleep and light. Thus, consciousness and magnetism speak of a journey from terrestrial to photonic aspects, cognition to knowledge, shadow to light, and faith to realization. My dear friends, this is a modest presentation. I am not a deep student of Vedantarian system of philosophy, but I have tried to understand and present how the concept of consciousness can be understood with the identity of the magnetism told by the scientists. And if we understand in one or two words, if we know aware with your human body, it is magnetism. With you are trying to interact with the psycho and psychic identities, it is called as consciousness. Consciousness is all pervading. It is not having a form, but it is symbolic. It is beyond everything. It is beyond everything and within everything and with everything and being everything. So it is the sign and the symbol. It is the Sankhya, Taraka and Amanaska also. And I thank the organizers, particularly Dr. Ravindranath, the head of the Department of Research and Development Organization. And I seek the blessings of Dr. Anje Perumal and K. Perumal and Mailanandan also. So with all your blessings, I try to say that one important thing, you understand that you are a divine conscious. Bio-consciousness is the outer circle of the divine consciousness. If we have that divine consciousness, you can enjoy the Turiyatita state, even in Turiya state, how Vedantari Maharshi has clearly mentioned in his experiences. Valga Vadamudam, Valga Vayagam.